Hello and welcome team. Here's the video for our reference and guidelines.
Doing this bit, and what's this bit is a pump on an espresso machine or a commercial espresso machine. So we're specifically looking at rotary pumps today. Vibratory pumps is another type of pump you will come across, and you would typically find those on the smaller home espresso machines, but we do find definitely smaller rotary pumps more on sort of high-end sort of espresso machines. But here we have today a typical pump that comes off a normal machine. So I've got a couple here to have a look at, and we'll pull them apart and we'll talk about really the three main things that we need to understand that really make up, I guess, the pump unit, which is the complete unit. So the first thing I want to talk about is this piece right here, which is at the very end. It's either silver or brass, and this is physically the pump. It is a very simple little piece of equipment. It has a shaft here on the end that will connect into the motor, and this shaft basically passes through a bearing, and then what passes through that on the end of that, attached to that, is a little fan or impeller, and as this sort of spins around, this is what pumps the water up to the machine. So as we have a look, typically here in the front, we can see that we have the two screw fittings or the brass fittings here that we connect our water to. One side of that, and there are directional arrows on it, will be for the feed water coming in, so this is coming off from your tap, and then we have the water that is getting pumped up into the machine. Next to the feed side here that we see is a brass screw and a lock nut, and this is basically for adjusting the pump pressure. You know, if you do see that your pump pressure is dropping down or it's a little bit too high, the key thing is to remember, just lock in a double handle with a normal dose of espresso coffee, lock it in and turn it on the manual flow button, and then adjust this screw to the 9 bars of pressure. So I guess what I'm saying is you always adjust your pump pressure under load. Cool. So that's what the pump is. The next thing that we come across is the actual motor itself. That's pretty self-explanatory. It is a single-phase AC motor, and this is normally either connected via a plug that we have here on some models, or what we can find, some people are doing some other different types of plug and socket fittings, or it is directly hardwired in through the terminal block on the top here, and that comes down from the espresso machine. As we pull the cap off to the terminal block, what I really want to be showing you is the capacitor. Now on these models we have as this one right here, or as you can see on this pump here, it does live externally on the outside. And this is a fairly important piece of equipment. So this is a capacitor, and what it really does is it's storing an electrical charge, and what this is basically going to do is going to jolt the motor at the start to help create the momentum through one or two of the windings to create that magnetic field to get the motor to physically spin. If we didn't have this capacitor, as we charge each of the windings electrically, there is no sort of momentum because the charge is applied equally, and so we can't create this sort of magnetic field and create the spinning action that we need. So the capacitor will be directing basically an additional charge to those windings to create that sort of spinning action. So it is a fairly important piece of equipment. Typically motors last a very long time, and we don't see too many problems with them. They typically don't like being run out of water, so definitely making sure that your water supply coming into the pump is not the problem. And so if they do tend to overheat, they will close down. The other thing that I would be basically looking at in terms of our pumps, if there is any sort of problems to it, if you are hearing a humming sound coming to the pump, it could be that simply that this particular bearing here is a little bit seized, and this may be simply because we've had the machine in storage or it hasn't been used for a while and it's a little bit sticky. So the first thing that I would normally do is take off the cover here on the back of the roaster. I've prepared one for you earlier. And here we have the fan that obviously spins around. And what I would typically do is I would just move this around manually and see if this spins around freely. And you may find initially when you first does it, there's a little bit more resistance, and as we roll it, it undoes itself. And this is just really clearing that sticky sort of bearing. Hopefully as we then connect it electrically and you put a charge on it, off it spins and away it goes. The next thing that possibly could be is, if we're still hearing that frequency hum, then obviously look at charging the capacitor itself. This is something you would get your electrician to have a look at, but all of the capacitors have their microfarad rating listed on the outside of it. and that would be a simple little changeover. And then finally, if none of that was possibly successful, then you would specifically be looking at the windings within the motor. You don't actually need to throw the motor away itself. You can send them away to a rewind company, and they will rewind with copper the actual winding themselves to have them replaced. So there you have it. That's